Modern food systems collapsed during minor disruptions, while medieval feudalism sustained. 74 million Europeans for centuries without trucks, refrigeration, or global supply chains. Archaeological evidence reveals 15 ingenious methods that guaranteed food security across vast territories through manorial organization and three-field rotation systems. Ready to discover how medieval communities achieved perfect food distribution that puts modern logistics to shame. Strip rotation medieval communities developed the revolutionary three-field system around 1000 CE that transformed agricultural productivity across Europe. Different methods offered varying benefits through systematic crop rotation. One field grew wheat, another cultivated legumes like peas and beans, while the third remained fallow for animal grazing. Archaeological evidence shows this technique dramatically enriched soil nutrients naturally. The genius lay in rotating these assignments annually, ensuring continuous fertility without chemical fertilizers. Modern agriculture typically focuses on monoculture. Ignoring this sustainable approach, manor network style technique involved organizing vast territories into self-sufficient manors, spanning hundreds of acres each. Medieval communities established complete production cycles within single estates. Unlike Roman commercial specialization, different materials offered varying advantages through local resource management. Lords controlled domain lands, while peasants worked assigned strips, creating integrated food systems. Common areas provided shared resources like forests and pastures for all residents. The genius lay in eliminating transport dependencies that plague modern supply chains. Archaeological evidence shows manors produced everything needed locally, ensuring food security regardless of external disruptions. Heavy plowing medieval farmers revolutionized agriculture through the caruca, a heavy plow capable of deep soil cultivation that transformed European farming forever. The technique involved using newly invented horse collars that rested on animal shoulders, allowing horses and oxen to pull much heavier loads without suffocating. Different regions offered varying soil types, but this innovation made previously unusable heavy clay soils productive across northern Europe. The genius lay in turning soil completely over, bringing air and nutrients to the surface while creating ridge and furrow drainage patterns. Modern tractors perform similar functions, but medieval communities achieved this breakthrough using only animal power, enabling massive agricultural expansion. Underground storage, medieval communities established sophisticated grain storage systems that preserved food for decades without refrigeration technology. The technique involved constructing hermetically sealed underground pits lined with straw barriers, preventing moisture and air contact that causes spoilage. Different storage methods offered varying preservation periods. Wheat remained edible for 50 years, while millet lasted over a century when properly stored. Archaeological evidence shows these silos used natural anaerobic conditions to halt decay processes. The genius lay in understanding that oxygen elimination prevented insect breeding and bacterial growth. Medieval farmers covered pit bottoms with dried straw, then sealed openings completely after filling with processed grain. When opened, only outer grain layers showed spoilage, while interior contents remained perfectly preserved. Modern science typically focuses on chemical preservation, but these communities achieved superior results using environmental control alone. Elevated granaries complemented underground storage, providing daily use supplies while keeping bulk reserves safe for emergencies. Monastery networks, medieval religious institutions, developed extensive food distribution systems that rivaled modern logistics companies in efficiency and reach. The technique involved appointing cellarers who purchased supplies across regions, coordinating with local farmers in distant markets to ensure steady provision flows. Different monasteries offered varying specializations. Some focused on grain production, others concentrated on livestock or preserved foods. Archaeological evidence shows monastic estates controlled vast agricultural territories through sharecropping arrangements with peasant communities. The genius lay in combining spiritual authority with economic management, creating trusted networks spanning entire kingdoms. Monastery kitcheners coordinated daily meal preparation for hundreds of residents, while almoners distributed surplus food to surrounding poor populations during harsh seasons. Medieval communities established these institutions as regional food banks long before modern welfare systems existed. Monks understood that controlling food distribution meant controlling social stability. Modern corporations typically focus on profit maximization, but monastic networks prioritized community survival, maintaining strategic reserves that prevented local famines and supported population growth throughout medieval Europe's expansion period. Mill revolution. Medieval engineers transformed food processing through watermill and windmill technology that dramatically increased productivity while reducing human labor requirements. The technique involved harnessing natural forces to grind massive quantities of grain efficiently. Mills processed 50 pounds of wheat in 30 minutes compared to entire days required. For hand ash grinding, different power sources offered varying advantages across European landscapes. Watermills dominated river valleys, while windmills served coastal plains and elevated regions. Archaeological evidence shows these installations became community focal points, with peasants traveling miles to access milling services despite mandatory fees charged by controlling lords. The genius lay in centralizing grain processing while maintaining distributed production systems. Medieval communities established mill networks that served multiple villages, creating economic interdependence that strengthened regional stability. Mill operators developed expertise in flour quality control, ensuring consistent bread production that sustained growing populations. Modern industrial processing typically focuses on massive centralized facilities, but medieval mill systems balanced efficiency with accessibility. Local mills reduced transport costs while providing reliable processing, enabling communities to convert harvested grains into storable flour that formed dietary foundations. Preservation. Mastery. Medieval communities perfected food preservation, techniques that extended shelf life for months without modern refrigeration technology. The technique involved multiple complementary methods tailored to specific food types and seasonal availability patterns. Different preservation approaches offered varying benefits. Salt curing prevented bacterial growth. Smoking added antimicrobial compounds, while fermentation created beneficial cultures that eliminated harmful microorganisms. Archaeological evidence shows medieval households maintained dedicated spaces for food processing activities. Root cellars provided cool, stable temperatures for storing vegetables through winter months. Smoking houses preserved meats using controlled wood combustion that added flavor while preventing spoilage. Salt, imported from coastal regions, became a valuable commodity essential for protein preservation. The genius lay in understanding that moisture elimination prevented decay without comprehending underlying biological processes. Medieval families dried fruits in summer sun, then stored them in sealed containers for winter consumption. Fermentation techniques transformed milk into long-lasting cheeses and vegetables into pickled products that enriched winter diets. Modern food science typically focuses on chemical additives, but medieval preservation relied on natural processes that often enhanced nutritional value while extending storage life, creating diverse food options throughout seasonal cycles. Livestock integration. Medieval farmers developed sophisticated animal management systems that maximized food production while maintaining soil fertility through integrated agricultural cycles. The technique involved coordinating livestock breeding, feeding, and processing schedules to ensure year-round protein availability from multiple sources. Different animals offered varying advantages. Sheep provided wool and meat, pigs converted waste into protein, while oxen supplied labor, power, and eventual food. Archaeological evidence shows medieval communities treated animals as living food storage systems that converted inedible materials into valuable nutrients. Cattle produced daily milk supplies that supported cheese production. Chickens provided regular eggs while processing kitchen scraps efficiently. The genius lay in timing breeding cycles to ensure fresh meat availability during winter months. When preserved foods dominated diets, medieval farmers understood that animals served multiple functions simultaneously. Livestock grazed fallow fields, depositing natural fertilizer that enriched soil for subsequent planting seasons. Pigs consumed food waste that would otherwise spoil, converting organic matter into valuable protein reserves. Modern agriculture typically focuses on specialized production systems, but medieval integration created sustainable cycles where animal waste enhanced crop yields while crops fed animals, establishing closed-loop systems that required minimal external inputs while supporting growing populations. Common resources. Medieval communities established sophisticated shared resource management systems that supplemented individual family food production through collective access to natural abundance. The technique involved designating specific territories as common lands where all community members held traditional rights to gather supplementary nutrition sources. Different seasonal opportunities offered varying contributions to overall food security. Archaeological evidence shows medieval villages carefully regulated access to forests, streams, and pasture lands through customary law systems that prevented overexploitation while ensuring equitable distribution. Wild nut gathering provided essential fats during autumn months. Chestnuts, walnuts, and hazelnuts added crucial calories to winter food stores. Spring brought edible plants like wild greens that combated vitamin deficiencies after long winters. The genius lay in recognizing that individual plots alone couldn't sustain communities during challenging periods. Common fishing rights ensured protein access for families lacking livestock. Shared pastures allowed poor peasants to graze animals they couldn't afford to feed privately. Woodland access provided fuel, building materials, and foraged foods that enriched basic grain-centered diets. Medieval communities established complex systems balancing individual needs with collective sustainability. Modern property law typically focuses on exclusive ownership, but medieval commons created social safety nets that prevented starvation while maintaining ecosystem balance through traditional knowledge passed between generations. Urban bridges. Medieval communities established sophisticated trade networks, connecting rural agricultural production with growing urban populations through carefully managed exchange systems. The technique involved developing regular market schedules that brought surplus farm products to town centers, while returning manufactured goods and specialized services to countryside producers. Different transportation methods offered varying capacities. River barges moved bulk grain efficiently, while pack animals transported high-value products across land routes. Archaeological evidence shows medieval towns depended entirely on surrounding agricultural regions for basic survival, creating economic relationships that benefited both urban craftsmen and rural farmers. The genius lay in recognizing that specialization increased overall productivity when supported by reliable exchange mechanisms. Urban markets provided outlets for agricultural surplus that exceeded local consumption needs, enabling rural communities to acquire tools, textiles, and luxury items that improved living standards. Seasonal festivals coordinated major trading activities, bringing together producers and consumers during optimal transport periods. Medieval urban-rural bridges created information networks that spread agricultural innovations rapidly across regions. Town merchants carried news about successful farming techniques, while rural visitors observed urban innovations that could benefit countryside activities. Modern global supply chains typically focus on distance sourcing, but medieval local networks created sustainable relationships between food producers and consumers, ensuring urban food security while providing rural communities access to specialized products and services. Seasonal coordination. Medieval agricultural communities synchronized complex labor schedules across entire regions to maximize productivity during critical farming periods, while ensuring adequate workforce availability for essential tasks. The technique involved coordinating planting, harvesting, and processing activities among multiple villages, enabling communities to share labor resources during peak demand periods. Different seasonal activities offered varying urgency levels, requiring precise timing coordination. Archaeological evidence shows medieval communities developed sophisticated knowledge systems that predicted optimal timing for agricultural activities based on weather patterns, soil conditions, and crop varieties. The genius lay in recognizing that successful farming required community-wide cooperation rather than individual family efforts alone. Seasonal coordination enabled efficient resource utilization. During harvest periods, when crops required immediate attention to prevent spoilage losses, communities organized collective work parties that moved systematically across different holdings, ensuring no family lost crops due to insufficient labor capacity. Medieval seasonal management included post-harvest processing activities like threshing, winnowing, and storage preparation that required specialized knowledge and equipment shared among community members. Mill scheduling coordinated grain processing to avoid bottlenecks during peak periods. Modern agricultural scheduling typically focuses on mechanized efficiency, but medieval coordination created social systems that strengthened community bonds. While ensuring food security through mutual assistance arrangements that protected individual families from seasonal labor shortages that could threaten survival, trade management, medieval communities established sophisticated surplus management, systems that converted excess agricultural production into valuable trade goods. While maintaining local food security through strategic reserve maintenance, the technique involved identifying optimal timing for surplus sales, while preserving sufficient supplies for local consumption and emergency situations. Different trade opportunities offered varying profitability depending on seasonal demand, patterns, and transportation accessibility. Archaeological evidence shows medieval farmers developed expertise in quality assessment that enabled them to separate premium products suitable for distant markets from standard goods intended for local consumption. The genius lay in maximizing economic returns from agricultural labor while ensuring community food needs remained satisfied throughout. Seasonal cycles. Trade management required careful coordination between production, planning, and market timing. Farmers adjusted crop varieties and processing methods to meet specific market demands for specialized products like fine wool, premium grains, or preserved foods that commanded higher prices in urban centers. Medieval surplus systems created economic opportunities that improved living standards while maintaining agricultural sustainability. Revenue from trade activities funded improvements in farming equipment, land development, and livestock acquisition that enhanced future productivity. Modern commodity markets typically focus on standardized products, but medieval trade relationships emphasized quality differentiation and personal connections between producers and merchants, creating stable economic networks that supported agricultural communities while supplying urban populations with diverse food products. Historical context. Archaeological excavations across northern Europe confirm that feudal agricultural systems achieved remarkable success over 8 centuries of continuous operation. Medieval communities supported a 500% population increase from 14 million to 74 million Europeans between 600 and 1300 CE through these integrated food production and distribution methods. The feudal heartland encompassed rich agricultural regions, including the Seine Valley in France and Thames Valley in England, where optimal conditions enabled system refinement. This success resulted from combining technological innovations like heavy plows and horse collars with social organization that coordinated individual efforts toward collective food security. Medieval communities understood that agricultural sustainability required balancing immediate consumption needs with long-term soil fertility and reserve maintenance. The system's durability demonstrated that decentralized food production could support large populations reliably. When properly organized through manorial structures and community cooperation principles that modern logistics networks struggle to replicate during crisis periods. Modern APPL contemporary communities can apply medieval food security principles through local network development that reduces dependence on vulnerable global supply chains. Community-supported agriculture programs mirror medieval manor organization by connecting local producers directly with consumer groups. Crop rotation techniques that medieval farmers perfected remain valuable for sustainable farming practices that maintain soil health without chemical inputs. Medieval preservation methods offer environmentally friendly alternatives to industrial food processing. Root cellars, fermentation, and natural drying techniques extend food storage periods while reducing energy consumption. Medieval crisis management strategies provide resilience models for emergency preparedness through community food storage and mutual aid systems. Ready to discover more powerful medieval secrets that modern experts ignore? Subscribe to our channel for weekly videos revealing forgotten wisdom that puts modern solutions to shame. Hit that notification bell so you never miss mind-blowing historical knowledge that could transform your understanding of sustainable living.